For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sashnee Moodley. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
You appear to pay little attention to the ANC Policy Conference. Why is this?
Yeah, everyone seems to be agreed that it's not really about policy and that people use policy positions as proxies, as emblematic of the candidate that they support. For example, if you use the word radical economic transformation, then you're supposedly a supporter of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, or if you are against, or if you're in favor of monopoly capital, white monopoly capital as a phrase, that also signifies support for her. Now, I think there's something more than that also, in that people who want to control the banks, want to control the Reserve Bank, they may be in that camp, but there is a real reason for it, in that the banks are blowing the whistle on illicit transactions which concern the Guptas or concern state-owned enterprises, in which some of the more corrupt members of the ANC leadership and others are involved. So that without this being a very prominent part of the policy conference, the notion of a developmental state has been tied in ANC understanding up to now with the role of state-owned enterprises. They were supposed to drive it. But now, in the eyes of the so-called radical economic transformation group, the banks are creating a barrier in the way of loosely handled tenders that are irregular, and the enrichment whereby you're getting a second wave of embourgeoisement of a capitalist class emerging amongst Africans, mainly as a result of tenders being given on a basis that is totally irregular. If you look at some of the things that are being done, the payments are out of all proportion. The person gets the lowest tender, seems in a lot of cases has the highest price, seems to get it ahead of others. So the policy conference, even though I'm saying there is some connection between the particular way in which economics are pursued and the faction supporting President Zuma and Dlamini Zuma as well, the policy conference didn't really discuss policy in any depth. People were there, and if you look at media reports, the media, in my view, colludes in depoliticizing South African politics, in making it all about candidates and things like this. Will Cyril win? Will Nkosazana win? And all this sort of thing. So that everyone was concerned with this thing of the last thing that Jacob Zuma said, the person who loses should become deputy president automatically, and so on. I feel that, everyone acknowledges that when certain positions were won, the significance was not so much on what that would mean for the economy, although Business Day and other newspapers say that ratings agencies will not like the sound of making the Reserve Bank a state bank, things like that. But the main reason why people were concerned about that in the conference was in order to win a position that signified the dominance of one or other person they were supporting. So I find it hard to get interested in this, but even before this, policy conferences were not really where policies were actually developed that became government policy. What would happen is there may have been a resolution in an ANC Congress or conference, but it still had to be made into law or a white paper or a green paper, and that would happen at the level of the government minister. And the government minister would draw in a specialist. And what was interesting about drawing in specialists, it's got nothing to do with democracy, how the specialist operates. And behind the scenes, the specialist might actually develop an ideological position which is even in conflict with what happened in the Congress. Gear was developed outside of the ANC. Not even the National Executive knew about Gear till it was adopted. The NDP, which has now been adopted by the ANC, didn't come out of a national policy conference. It came out of the National Policy Commission, which is a very different structure. So that these conferences, policy conferences, are, in my view, not the best places to develop policy, and they know it.
If the conference isn't about policy, in the main, what effects, if any, will it have?
Well, it may become clearer that one or other person is going to become president. And if it is Cyril Ramaphosa, it is not going to be a smooth situation, because that means that Jacob Zuma is state president for 2 more years and Cyril Ramaphosa is president of the ANC. Will Cyril Ramaphosa try to get Zuma to step down? He's not the sort of person who just steps down. Will Zuma take it lying down? Zuma might well get rid of all the Ramaphosa supporters from his cabinet. He might even fire Ramaphosa from the cabinet as deputy president and create a crisis. Zuma is indifferent to rating agencies. He's indifferent to the rand collapsing. His way of accumulating wealth is not really affected by those things. So that the possibility of Cyril Ramaphosa winning, we mustn't assume is going to lead to a process whereby he automatically becomes state president and automatically remedies all the things that people think are wrong with the Zuma period. Zuma is very wily, and he's not afraid to do things that destroy the economy, destroy the country, anything, as long as he looks after himself.
Thanks for speaking with us, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the ANC Polity Conference and whether we should pay attention.